The unexpected challenger. The Galactic Empire had always believed that they were invincible. For centuries, they had ruled the galaxy with an iron fist, crushing any resistance that dared to challenge their power. Their fleets were vast, their weapons unstoppable, and their technology unmatched. To them, no force in the galaxy could stand against them. But all of that was about to change. It was on a quiet, unremarkable day that the first sign of trouble came. The Empire's fleet, led by the mighty Stellar Dominion, was on a routine patrol through the outer rim of the galaxy. The Empire's admirals and generals sat comfortably in their command centers, confident that no threat could reach them in these remote regions. The fleet was massive, made up of destroyers, battleships, and elite fighters. The Empire had wiped out entire civilizations before, and this was just another quiet mission to remind the galaxy of their power. But on this day, something strange was happening. A small, unarmed human vessel, nothing more than a speck on the radar, was spotted near the fleet. It was a ship of no particular significance. It had no weapons, no shields, and no real military capabilities. To the Empire's fleet commanders, it was nothing more than an insignificant blip on their radar, a stray ship that probably got lost in the vastness of space. They didn't even give it a second thought. But the human ship wasn't lost, and it wasn't insignificant. This was the Shadow Blade, a stealth ship designed by humanity for one sole purpose: to challenge the Empire. No one in the Empire had any idea of the ship's capabilities, or that it even existed. The Shadow Blade was built in secret, and its crew, led by Captain Rook, was prepared to face the impossible. Captain Rook sat in the ship's cockpit, his hands gripping the controls. He had been waiting for this moment for years, ever since the Empire had crushed the human resistance on Earth. Rook had witnessed the fall of his homeworld, the destruction of entire cities, and the slaughter of innocent lives. Now, humanity's only hope lay in his hands. With a deep breath, Captain Rook activated the ship's cloaking device. The Shadow Blade vanished from the Empire's sensors, slipping silently into the void of space. The crew of the Stellar Dominion had no idea what was coming. They continued their patrol, unaware that their entire fleet was about to face a force they could not comprehend. As the Shadow Blade moved into position, Rook's crew remained focused. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. They knew that the Empire would underestimate them, just as they had underestimated humanity for so long. But they were ready to prove the Empire wrong. The ship's stealth technology allowed it to move undetected, slipping past the Empire's ships one by one. The Stellar Dominion fleet moved slowly through the stars, unaware of the predator lurking just out of sight. Captain Rook kept his eyes on the control panel, his mind calculating the best time to strike. They had only one shot at this, and they couldn't afford to fail. The Empire's fleet continued its patrol, seemingly unaware of the approaching danger. Suddenly, the Shadow Blade was in position. The time had come. With a single command from Captain Rook, the ship decloaked. In an instant, the human ship emerged from the darkness, a ghost in the stars. The Empire's fleet didn't know what hit them. Before the Empire could react, the Shadow Blade unleashed its first strike. A volley of missiles shot out from the ship, slamming into the lead battleship of the fleet. Explosions rocked the space around the ship, sending debris flying in every direction. The Stellar Dominion's shields flared in a desperate attempt to protect the ship, but it was too late. The human ship was already gone, disappearing back into the shadows before the Empire could retaliate. The Empire's fleet was in chaos. The Stellar Dominion's commander, Admiral Torek, stared in disbelief at the damage on his ship's display. How had this happened? One human ship had appeared out of nowhere and dealt such a blow to the Empire's pride. The Stellar Dominion wasn't just any ship. It was the crown jewel of the Empire's fleet. It was meant to be unbeatable. But now, it was crippled. Alert the fleet. Find that ship. Admiral Torek ordered, his voice trembling with fury. The rest of the fleet immediately went on high alert, activating shields and weapons, but it was too late. The Shadow Blade was already on the move, disappearing once again into the darkness of space. The Empire's commanders were scrambling. They couldn't understand how a single human ship had managed to strike so effectively. They had never seen anything like it before. Their ships were designed to be the most powerful in the galaxy, yet this human vessel had slipped through their defenses with ease. And it wasn't just a minor attack. It had crippled their most powerful battleship. The Shadow Blade had delivered the first blow. But this was only the beginning. The Empire had no idea what was coming next. The fear had already begun to spread among the fleet. No one knew how to stop the Shadow Blade, or what the humans had planned next. Captain Rook smiled grimly to himself as he watched the chaos unfold on his display. The Empire had made a grave mistake. They had underestimated humanity. And now, the galaxy would learn that humans were not to be taken lightly. The Shadow Blade moved swiftly through the stars, preparing for its next strike. The Galactic Empire had no idea what was about to hit them, and humanity's war for freedom had only just begun. The Empire strikes back. The unexpected attack had left the Empire's fleet in a state of disarray. Admiral Torek stood in the command center of the Stellar Dominion, still grappling with the fact that a single human ship had nearly destroyed his most powerful vessel. The damage was severe. The lead battleship's systems were barely functional, and the morale of the crew had been shattered. They had been caught off guard, and it had cost them dearly. Status report. Admiral Torek barked, his voice full of frustration. His officers scrambled to provide him with answers, but there were no immediate solutions. The attack had been swift, precise, and the damage had been done. "We've lost communication with the lead ship, sir," an officer reported, her voice trembling. "It's going to take time to repair the systems, but we are not in immediate danger of losing the entire fleet." "That's not good enough," Torek shouted. "We can't allow the humans to get away with this. They're playing with fire now. This is our galaxy, and no one, least of all a ragtag human ship, will challenge our rule." Despite his anger, Torek knew one thing for certain. This was not a simple skirmish. The humans had a plan, and they had the means to carry it out. Their stealth technology was unlike anything the Empire had ever encountered, and it was clear that this Shadow Blade was no ordinary ship. The Stellar Dominion and the rest of the fleet were no longer the only dangers in the galaxy. "Send word to the rest of the fleet," Torek continued. "No one leaves their posts. We are going to find that ship, and we are going to make an example of them. Prepare all ships for battle. The Empire will not be humiliated by these humans." At that moment, the Empire began to regroup. The fleet's remaining ships locked into formation, and their weapons systems powered up. It was clear that Torek was preparing for a counterattack, one that would involve bringing every ship and soldier to bear on the human threat. They had learned a hard lesson. Underestimating humanity was a fatal mistake. Now they would make sure that mistake was never repeated. Meanwhile, on the Shadow Blade, Captain Rook was already planning the next move. The success of their first strike was just the beginning. Humanity had been underestimated for far too long, and Rook was determined to change that perception forever. His crew, though small in number, was fiercely loyal, and they had trained for years for a moment like this. Every one of them had sworn to avenge Earth, to fight for humanity's freedom, and to destroy the Empire that had stolen everything from them. "Captain, we've received a distress signal from the Stellar Dominion," one of the crew members announced, his voice urgent. "They're sending out a fleet-wide alert. They're preparing for battle." Rook's face hardened. "It was inevitable," he said, more to himself than anyone else. "The Empire won't let this go, but we've got them right where we want them." He turned to his crew. "We've hit them once, and now we'll hit them again. But we need to be smart. The Empire is going to fight back with everything they've got. They won't make the same mistake twice. We have to stay one step ahead." The Shadow Blade was equipped with the latest in stealth technology, a gift from human engineers who had spent years perfecting it. The ship's hull absorbed energy, making it nearly invisible to enemy scanners. It was also fast, agile, and deadly, exactly what they needed to take on the might of the Empire. "Prepare for our next strike," Captain Rook ordered. "We're going after the next ship in the fleet. The Empire needs to learn that no matter how many ships they send, it won't matter. We will fight until every last one of them is gone." As the crew got to work, Rook's mind raced with strategy. He knew the Empire would send reinforcements. The attack on their battleship would not go unanswered. But the Empire was not prepared for the speed and precision of the Shadow Blade. They would never expect what was coming. The time for subtlety had passed. It was time to escalate. Humanity had been the underdog for far too long. Now they would take the fight to the heart of the Empire. And they would strike when the Empire least expected it. Rook looked out into the dark void of space, his eyes fixed on the Empire's fleet. "Let them come," he muttered. "They'll regret ever crossing us." The Shadow Blade slipped back into the shadows, its cloaking device activating once more. The next phase of the battle had begun, and there would be no turning back. The Silent Fury. The Empire's counteroffensive was now in motion. Admiral Torek stood on the bridge of the Stellar Dominion, watching the vast fleet of warships being deployed. Each ship, a symbol of the Empire's might, was prepared for retaliation. The sleek, heavily armed vessels stretched across space, their engines burning with intensity, signaling their readiness to crush the human threat. "Admiral, we've detected the Shadow Blade," an officer reported urgently. "It's in the system, but we can't track it. The stealth technology is still interfering with our sensors. It's like it vanishes and reappears at will." Torek clenched his fists. He knew the human ship was capable of evading detection, but this was something else. His fleet was one of the most advanced in the galaxy, yet they were struggling to even find their enemy. He had underestimated the humans' ingenuity before, but now, the price of that mistake seemed clear. "Where is it now?" Torek demanded. The officer hesitated, then pointed to the screen. "It appears to be circling the fleet, staying just out of range of our sensors. It's like it's toying with us." A cold sweat ran down Torek's neck. He had seen many battles, but this felt different. The Shadow Blade wasn't just another ship. It was a weapon of war unlike any he had encountered. He had no doubt that the human ship was taking its time, carefully selecting its targets. "We cannot allow this to continue," Torek muttered. "Get the fleet into battle formation. I want every ship on high alert. Prepare to engage." Meanwhile, aboard the Shadow Blade, Captain Rook watched the Empire's fleet, now spread out and attempting to cover as much space as possible. The human stealth technology was working for now, but Rook knew it wouldn't be long before the Empire adapted and found a way to break through their cloaking systems. "We need to act quickly," Rook said to his crew, his voice low but full of determination. "We've already made our mark, but we can't stay hidden forever. We'll take down a few more ships, and then we're out." The crew moved swiftly, coordinating their efforts to identify the best targets. The Empire's fleet was formidable, but it had a weakness: overconfidence. They believed that their numbers and advanced technology would guarantee victory, but they had yet to face humanity's true wrath. Rook tapped a console in front of him, selecting a target: a massive battleship that was flanked by two smaller cruisers. It was a perfect opportunity. "Lock onto their weak points and prepare the torpedoes," he ordered. "We hit fast, we hit hard, and then we disappear." The crew scrambled into action, working in synchronized precision. The Shadow Blade systems hummed as its weapons charged. They had no time to waste. Every second brought them closer to discovery. The Empire's ships would soon be ready for a counterattack, but Rook wasn't concerned. He had already made up his mind. They would strike before the Empire could even think to strike back. "Launch in 3, 2, 1. Rook's voice dropped to a whisper, but the intensity was undeniable. He felt the ship's weapons release as the Shadow Blade fired a barrage of torpedoes aimed directly at the massive battleship's vulnerable underbelly. The impact was devastating. The torpedoes exploded in rapid succession, ripping through the outer hull. Sparks flew from the damaged ship as it buckled under the sudden assault. But the Shadow Blade was already gone, vanishing back into the shadows of space. On the Stellar Dominion, alarms blared. The massive battleship that had once seemed invincible was now heavily damaged, its shields flickering as the remaining cruisers rushed to its aid. "Damage report," Torek demanded, his face pale. His worst fear had become reality. The humans had struck again, and the Stellar Dominion was on the verge of being crippled. "Sir, the damage is critical. Shields are down, weapons are offline. We've lost contact with the lower decks," an officer replied, his voice shaking. Torek's eyes narrowed. This time, he couldn't afford to be patient. He had underestimated the humans once before, and it had nearly cost him everything. Now, he would make sure they would never get the chance to do it again. "Prepare all ships for immediate retaliation," Torek ordered. "The Shadow Blade is out there, and we will find it. No more games. We will hunt them down, and when we do, we will make them pay." The Empire strikes back. The Stellar Dominion was a ship built for war. Its hull, reinforced with alloys stronger than most other ships in the galaxy, now bore the scars of humanity's relentless assault. The damage was extensive, but not enough to disable the entire fleet. Admiral Torek stood at the bridge, his jaw clenched in frustration. "We will hunt them down. This Shadow Blade will not escape again," Torek growled, his voice thick with determination. "Recalibrate our sensors. We are going to find that ship, no matter what it takes." The officers around him worked quickly, adjusting the ship's systems to compensate for the unpredictable stealth technology the humans had employed. But Torek knew that this would not be an easy task. The humans had shown their ability to strike when least expected, and they had done it with precision. He had been humiliated in front of his entire fleet, and he could not allow it to happen again. "Admiral, we have an idea," one of the officers said, her voice tentative. "We can launch a series of electromagnetic pulses across the sector. It might disrupt their cloaking systems long enough for us to track them." Torek raised an eyebrow. It was risky, but it could work. If they could break through the human ship's stealth tech, they could finally see it, finally take it down. "Do it. Activate the pulses, but make sure every ship in the fleet is ready to engage. We strike as one." As the command was relayed, the Stellar Dominion and its fleet of warships moved into position, spreading out across the sector. The order was clear. They would find the Shadow Blade and wipe it from existence. No more games, no more tricks. Meanwhile, aboard the Shadow Blade, Captain Rook and his crew were preparing for what was coming next. Their last strike had shaken the Empire, but Rook knew they wouldn't back down. In fact, he was certain the Empire would be more ruthless now. They had poked a sleeping giant, and it was angry. "Rook, the Empire is preparing something," the ship's tactical officer warned. "They're moving in formation. I think they're about to launch something big." Rook felt the tension rise. He had anticipated that the Empire would come for them again, but he hadn't expected it this soon. The Stellar Dominion was a formidable opponent, and if they were going to strike, they needed to do it before the Empire figured out their strategy. "Prepare to jump to a new position. We can't stay in one place for too long," Rook ordered, his voice steady despite the anxiety creeping in. "We'll hit them where it hurts, then vanish again. We can't let them corner us." The crew sprang into action, their movements synchronized as they worked to reconfigure the Shadow Blade's stealth systems. Rook's mind raced as he weighed his options. They had dealt a blow to the Empire, but now the tables had turned. The Empire wasn't going to give them a second chance. "We'll use their overconfidence against them," Rook muttered to himself. "Let them think they've cornered us. Then we'll show them the true strength of humanity." As the Empire's ships moved into position, readying their attack, the Shadow Blade's cloaking systems hummed into life. With a few quick adjustments, the ship disappeared from the Empire's sensors once more. Rook knew this wouldn't last forever, But for now, they had the advantage. "We're ready," Rook said to his crew. "Let's give them a fight they'll never forget." The fleet of the Galactic Empire moved steadily, each ship lined up and prepared for battle. Torik's confidence was growing as he watched the vast array of ships, each one a testament to the Empire's military might. The Shadow Blade would not escape this time. "Admiral," an officer said, breaking the silence, "the pulse is ready. We can initiate it now." "Do it," Torik commanded. "We'll find them, and we'll make them regret ever challenging us." The electromagnetic pulse shot out in every direction, sweeping across the sector like an invisible wave. It was powerful, designed to disrupt any hidden ship's ability to cloak itself. For a moment, the sensors on the stellar Dominion flickered, showing nothing but the empty void of space. Then, just as suddenly as it started, the pulse passed. The Empire's fleet held its position, waiting for the inevitable sign that the Shadow Blade had been located, but there was nothing. No sign of the human ship. Torik's face hardened. "Where are they? We should have found them by now." The officer checked the readings again. "There's no sign of any cloaked ships, sir. It's as if the pulse didn't even affect them." Torik's frustration grew. "Impossible. They must be somewhere. Scan again, and don't stop until we find them." But no matter how many times they scanned, no matter how many adjustments they made to their systems, the Shadow Blade was nowhere to be found. It was as if the ship had simply vanished into thin air. Rook watched from the Shadow Blade, his eyes narrowing with satisfaction. "Now let's see how they handle this," he whispered to himself. The Empire's confidence was slowly turning to fear, and humanity's wrath was far from finished. The game had just begun. The hunt intensifies. Admiral Torik paced back and forth on the bridge of the stellar Dominion, his hands clenched tightly behind his back. The seconds stretched into minutes, then into hours. The pulse had failed. They hadn't found the Shadow Blade, and that failure was eating away at his pride. "How is this possible?" Torik muttered, his eyes fixed on the empty expanse of space displayed on the massive view screen. The pulse should have worked. No ship can escape it. An officer nervously stepped forward. "Sir, there is something else we've detected. It's not much, but we believe we've picked up a faint signal. It's sporadic, almost like a glitch, but it might be the human ship." Torik turned to face the officer, his eyes burning with frustration and rage. "Why wasn't I informed of this sooner? We just analyzed the data. Admiral, it's only a small anomaly, but it could be their cloaking technology trying to compensate. We believe it's coming from the sector near the Nebulon fields." Torik stared at the officer for a long moment, then turned his gaze back to the screen. The Nebulon fields were known for being dense with space debris and dangerous radiation. It was an area where ships often disappeared. But the Empire's fleet wasn't just any fleet. It was the Stellar Dominion and its elite warships. Nothing could hide from them for long. "Plot a course to the Nebulon fields. All ships, move out. We're not leaving until we find the human ship. Full speed ahead." Meanwhile, aboard the Shadow Blade, Rook's crew was working feverishly. The Empire had been searching for them for hours, but it had all been for nothing. Their cloaking technology was holding strong, and they were hidden deep within the Nebulon fields, a perfect place to lie low for a while. But Rook knew the Empire would eventually figure it out. They wouldn't stop until they found them. He could sense it, feel the tension building. The Empire was relentless, and they were closing in. "Captain," the ship's navigator reported, "we've detected the Empire's fleet approaching. They're heading straight for the Nebulon fields." Rook's eyes narrowed. "I knew they wouldn't give up that easily. Prepare to move. We'll have to make them think we're still here, then slip away when they least expect it." The crew worked quickly, setting the ship's systems to emit a faint signal, a decoy, just enough to leave the Empire off their trail. The Shadow Blade would remain hidden, but the illusion of activity would lure the Empire into thinking they had found their target. "Let's make this interesting," Rook muttered, his voice cool and calm. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers." As the Empire's fleet entered the Nebulon fields, Admiral Torik's grip tightened on the command console. The dense clouds of radiation and debris made it nearly impossible to see what lay ahead, but his instincts told him they were getting closer. "Admiral, we're nearing the coordinates of the signal anomaly," an officer reported. "We should be in range of the human ship soon." Torik nodded. "Prepare all weapons. This is it. We find them now, or we leave the sector with nothing to show for our efforts." But just as the fleet moved deeper into the Nebulon fields, something unusual happened. The readings on their sensors fluctuated wildly, and then the faint signal they had been tracking vanished entirely. "Where did it go?" Torik demanded. "What happened to the signal?" "The anomaly is gone, sir," the officer replied, eyes wide with confusion. It just disappeared." Torik's heart skipped a beat. "It can't disappear. Scan the area. We can't afford another failure." The fleet moved slowly through the Nebulon fields, each ship's sensors on full alert. They searched every corner of the sector, but there was no sign of the Shadow Blade. The decoy had worked perfectly. The human ship was still hidden, its cloaking technology rendering it invisible to the Empire's best efforts. Torik's face turned red with anger. "This is unacceptable. Prepare the EMP blast. We'll scatter the debris in the hopes of flushing them out." But just as the order was about to be given, another officer called out, "Sir, there's something in the distance. It's faint, but it's definitely there." Torik's eyes snapped to the officer. "What is it?" "It's a ship. A small one, but it's moving. It could be the human ship." Finally, Torik muttered under his breath, "Target it. Lock weapons onto that ship and prepare for attack." Back on the Shadow Blade, Rook watched as the Empire's fleet moved through the debris field. His pulse quickened as the sensors flared up, showing the Empire had finally located the decoy. "We need to move now," Rook ordered. "Engage the engines. Get us out of here, but keep the cloaking active. We'll make them think they found us, then we'll disappear again." The crew scrambled to execute the orders. The Shadow Blade's engines hummed to life, and it moved silently through the field. The ship's cloaking systems adjusted, becoming even more refined. It was a game of cat and mouse, and Rook wasn't ready to lose. As the Empire's fleet locked onto the decoy, Rook couldn't help but feel a surge of satisfaction. The Empire was getting closer, but they were still a step behind. Humanity had proven its cunning once again. "We'll hit them when they least expect it," Rook said, a determined glint in his eyes. "Just wait." The final standoff. The stellar dominion had advanced deep into the Nebulon fields, a maze of floating debris and charged gas clouds that twisted and turned like a deadly labyrinth. Admiral Torik's nerves were on edge, his mind racing. Every moment brought them closer to their target, but the longer they searched, the more frustrated he became. Where was the human ship? Why couldn't they find it? "Sir," an officer reported, "we've analyzed the debris field again. The signal has vanished completely. There's no trace left." Torik clenched his fists in anger. The humans were elusive, their technology far beyond what the Empire had anticipated. He had never been more determined to crush them. "We're not leaving here empty-handed," Torik snapped. "Prepare to deploy the heavy reconnaissance drones. We'll burn the entire field if we have to." Aboard the Shadow Blade, Rook felt the pressure mounting. The Empire had been closing in for hours, and every second that passed made it harder to keep their position hidden. He knew they couldn't keep up this game of hide-and-seek forever, but he also knew the Empire was about to make a mistake. They were too sure of themselves, too confident that they could find him. "Captain, the fleet has deployed drones," reported his communications officer. "They're sweeping the entire field. We won't be able to stay hidden for much longer." Rook's eyes narrowed. "It's now or never. We can't let them get too close." He stood up, his voice low but filled with purpose. "Prepare to deploy our countermeasures. Activate the decoy drones And the EMP shield. We're going to make them think we're out of range. The Empire won't know what hit them. The crew moved quickly, setting up the ship's advanced systems. The Shadow Blade was designed for moments like this, where deception and speed were the keys to survival. The Stellar Dominion cruised through the field, the drones scanning every corner of the debris. The officers on the bridge worked tirelessly, monitoring each drone's feed as it filtered through the chaos of the nebula. But the Shadow Blade was nowhere to be seen. "Sir, the drones are picking up something," one officer called out, his voice tinged with excitement. "There's a faint signal. It's coming from the right quadrant, near the larger gas clouds." Torik's eyes widened. "That's it. Prepare to fire on the coordinates. This time, we won't miss." Target locked. "Admiral, we're ready." Rook stood at the center of the Shadow Blade's bridge, his fingers tight around the armrest of his chair. The time had come. The Empire thought they had found him, but he knew they were wrong. The decoy drones had successfully distracted them, but now they had to act quickly. "Deploy the anti-detection flares," Rook ordered. "Activate the cloaking system to its maximum power. We need to disappear in plain sight." The ship's systems hummed with power, and the crew scrambled to execute the commands. Outside, a set of holographic decoys launched into the nebula, creating the illusion of multiple ships in all directions. But the Shadow Blade remained hidden, its cloaking technology rendering it invisible to the Empire's sensors. Rook smiled grimly. "Let them think they've won." The Empire's fleet barreled through the debris, their sensors frantically scanning the area. Torik stood at the helm, waiting for confirmation that the human ship had been struck. "Sir, the drones are converging on the target," an officer reported. "It's a hit. We've destroyed one of the decoys." Torik frowned. "That's not enough. Keep searching. They're here somewhere." But the Shadow Blade wasn't where the Empire thought it was. As Torik's fleet fired, Rook's ship was already moving, slipping past the advancing warships undetected. The Shadow Blade was a ghost, silent and swift. It passed through the Imperial fleet, its engines barely making a sound as it sped toward the heart of the Empire's formation. "The Empire won't know what hit them," Rook muttered, his voice filled with cold determination. As the Shadow Blade neared the Empire's flagship, the Stellar Dominion, Rook gave the order. "Lock onto their engines and fire. We're taking this fleet down, piece by piece." Back on the Stellar Dominion, Torik's officers were still scanning the area, but the signal was fading, slipping through their fingers. The Shadow Blade was playing its game, and it was winning. "Sir," one officer called urgently, "the fleet's left flank is exposed." The human ship. But before the officer could finish, a violent explosion rocked the Stellar Dominion. The blast came from behind the fleet, where the Shadow Blade had fired its first devastating shot. Targeting the engines, Rook's voice echoed in the control room. "That's their Achilles heel." Torik's eyes went wide as the explosion spread through the Imperial warships. The Stellar Dominion was taking fire from all directions, and the Empire's ships began to break formation. They were under attack, but they hadn't even seen their enemy. "This can't be happening," Torik muttered in disbelief. "Where did they come from?" The Shadow Blade circled the Stellar Dominion with precision, its weapons blazing. The Empire was in chaos. They had underestimated the humans, and now they were paying the price. Rook's voice was calm, almost cold. "They were never ready for us. Not like this." As the Empire's fleet staggered, the Shadow Blade continued to strike from the shadows, its precision unmatched. The Stellar Dominion had underestimated a lone human ship, and that mistake was going to cost them everything. The fall of the Empire. The battle was in full swing, and the Stellar Dominion's flagship was beginning to show signs of strain. Its massive hull was pocked with scorch marks, and its once pristine weapon systems were malfunctioning. The Empire had always prided itself on its superior technology and overwhelming numbers, but now it was crumbling under the relentless assault from a single unseen adversary. Torik's hands were shaking as he gripped the control panel. His face was pale, eyes wide in disbelief. The enemy wasn't just some unknown force, it was humanity, and they had brought hell with them. "Status report," he barked, his voice filled with panic. "Shields failing, sir. Engine power down by 30%. We can't maintain our current position." An officer replied, fear evident in their voice. Torik slammed his fist into the armrest, his frustration boiling over. How? How is this happening? We should have crushed them already. But there was no answer, no explanation that would make sense to him. The reality was stark. The Empire was losing. A single human ship, a lone vessel with no hope of victory by conventional standards, was dismantling the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. Aboard the Shadow Blade, Rook stood tall at the center of the bridge. His expression was calm, almost detached, as he observed the destruction unfolding on the enemy fleet's flagship. Every shot, every move they made was precise, surgical. The Shadow Blade had become a phantom in the night. It strikes lightning fast and nearly impossible to counter. "Captain, the flagship is down to 20% shield strength. We're almost there," his weapons officer reported, voice filled with a sense of awe. Rook didn't smile. He didn't need to. This wasn't a victory yet. It was just the beginning. But it was clear the Empire had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the ultimate price. "Keep up the pressure," Rook commanded. "One more strike. Take out their central command center. The battle is won when their leadership falls." On the Stellar Dominion, Torik could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. The Empire had thrown everything at the humans, yet here they were, facing the impossible. His once proud fleet was a broken shell, with panic spreading through every rank. "Sir, we've lost contact with the rear fleet," an officer announced. "They've been entirely wiped out." Torik's heart sank. No, this can't be happening. He struggled to maintain control of the bridge, his mind racing for any solution, any hope. But deep down, he knew the truth. There was no coming back from this. The Shadow Blade had broken the Empire, and soon there would be nothing left to save. Back on the Shadow Blade, Rook was focused. The final blow was near. The Empire's flagship was already a wreck, but the heart of their operation, their command center, was still functioning. He knew that if they could take out that last node, the battle would be over. Humanity would have won. "Prepare for the final strike," Rook ordered. "Target their command center. Once we take it out, their fleet will fall apart." The crew worked swiftly, their every move a reflection of the precision drilled into them. They had one shot. This had to be perfect. In the depths of the Stellar Dominion, Torik watched in horror as the Shadow Blade closed in. His communications officer suddenly turned pale, eyes wide with panic. "Sir, they're locking onto our central command." The realization hit Torik like a hammer. No. Evasive maneuvers. Now. But it was too late. The Shadow Blade had already fired. A massive explosion erupted from the Stellar Dominion's central core, sending shockwaves throughout the flagship. The command center, the heart of the Empire's last hope, was gone. In an instant, the Empire's fleet descended into complete chaos. The Stellar Dominion began to drift, its engines completely offline, its power systems failing. Without its command structure, the fleet had lost all sense of direction. It was a sitting target, completely vulnerable. Rook watched from the Shadow Blade, his expression hardening. Now finish them off. Let them know they made the last mistake of their lives. The Shadow Blade accelerated, firing one last time. This time, the shot was aimed at the heart of the fleet. The Empire had no chance. With their flagship crippled, their remaining ships were mere fragments of their former selves, scattered and disoriented. Within minutes, the once mighty fleet of the Galactic Empire was shattered. The remaining ships tried to retreat, but they were easy prey for the Shadow Blade. One by one, the enemy ships fell, their debris drifting aimlessly through the void. Torek was a broken man, his mind unable to comprehend the devastation. The fleet he had commanded, the empire he had served, was no more, and it had been destroyed by one lone human ship.